I'm Shifa Rifai, and I'm a student of political science at Cairo University in Egypt. I'm also a member of the Earth Project, and I'm the representative of Egypt in the Conference of Youth for Climate Change, which is organized under the auspices of UNFCCC. So I'm happy again to be here today with you. And first of all, I'd like you to introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Trisia Farrelly. I'm an environmental anthropologist. I'm based in New Zealand. I'm a member of the expert group for the United Nations Environment Assembly on marine litter and microplastics. And I have also been a member of the Scientific Advisory Committee for the United Nations Environment Programme on marine litter and microplastics as well. I'm the co-founder and trustee of the Aotearoa Plastic Pollution Alliance, which is a campaign group based here in New Zealand, and the New Zealand Product Stewardship Council co-founder and trustee, and the director of the Political Ecology Research Centre, so a few hats.
So it's a pleasure to host an expert who is just like you. So if we can just talk about the global plastic pollution, what are the main causes or the root causes of the global plastic pollution?
There are lots of causes, and it's historical, cultural, economic, political, all of those things. There are simple answers to that question, and there are more complex answers to that question. So I'll go for the simpler response first, Sharif. I guess one of the main causes of plastic pollution is single-use plastics, which constitutes approximately 40% of the plastics we find, for example, in marine litter. So single-use plastics, that very short-lived plastic, is a real problem. And I guess it's driven by production, but it's also, I think, a symptom of hyperconsumption, of consumer capitalism, convenience culture, all of those things as well. So those are some simple responses, I guess, to that question.
Talk about the gap between the global south and the global north, between the developing countries and the developed countries. So, do you believe that the global plastic pollution can reduce or can maximize that gap between the developing and developed countries?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's a lot of inequities involved in plastic pollution. We're starting to, a lot of researchers are starting to frame plastic pollution as waste colonialism at the moment. And I guess it's come out of the Basel Plastics Amendment, or actually the Basel Amendment, which regulates the trade of waste from country to country, predominantly from higher GDP countries or OECD countries to lower GDP countries or non-OECD countries. So the expression waste colonialism came out of the Basel Convention sort of meetings and has been taken up at that point. I think it was framed more, I think, as toxic waste or something like that, but it's been taken up now as waste colonialism. And there's good reason for that. The production, the major production, but also the source of plastic, right all the way back from extraction, is really part of a process of dispossession of land, power of large transnational corporations, for example, and relationships with powerful states. To draw the resources from those who are less powerful, developing countries, to use those resources for the betterment of those more developed countries, and to the expense of those developing countries, where quite often they end up not reaping the benefits of the resource extraction and production, and in fact bearing the majority of the harms associated with those, and dispossession of land being a large part of that as well. So I think there's we've seen over the years a real lack of ability for developing countries to really gain traction in terms of preventing plastic pollution in their countries, for many reasons. Again, it's around political power, trade agreements, lack of infrastructure and resources, lack of access to science, and therefore, this real gap between science and policy, and therefore, really robust policy and legislation to further protect themselves against plastic pollution. There's lots of things involved there.
Okay, so we always talk about the role of youth and the role of young people in preserving the nature and preserving the environment. So, how could us as young people and youth contribute to reducing or the reduction of the global plastic pollution?
Oh, I think by using your voices, as young people are so good at. This generation is incredibly impressive. We have an incredibly intelligent generation, a really well, political and really in touch, and very eloquent younger generation, around environmental and social justice issues. There's some incredible work that's been done by youth groups around the world. And so for me, it's around activism through micro actions, sort of micro activism, just in just everyday practices, whether it's in consumer choices, or in spreading the word, spreading the science, talking about the need to push up to those broader, larger structures of power, to change things from bottom up, and also to get involved, as you're doing, Sharif, here, which is really terrific. Getting involved in this kind of thing where you have the opportunity to connect with people who have, again, agency and power to really make change at a broader level, really powerful, robust changes at national level, at regional level, and at international level. So seeing a lot of young people at United Nations assemblies and meetings is incredibly important. And people listen. I mean, like, they really, really listen to young people, because young people are the next generation. Just relating, plastics to next generations. Plastics has, and probably more people need to know about this, in terms of the harms associated with plastics. We know that plastics has a very, very long life. In fact, it really never goes away. It just kind of emerges in another shape or form somewhere, whether it's as a micro nanoplastic, or whether it carries some invasive species somewhere, or if it off gases or the chemicals leach out of it. And they go on to have these other novel relationships with other things and people as they sort of move around. But they're also intergenerational and transgenerational in their health impacts as well. So it's not just the long-term impacts, that the kinds of production of plastics that we're seeing in huge and ever-increasing volumes today, it's not just going to affect present generations, it's going to seriously impact on the next generation and next generation, again, environmentally, but also genetically. So the endocrine disrupting chemicals, the toxicants associated with plastics, the persistent organic pollutants that are also interrelated with plastic pollution, has huge impacts on bodies, through generations, not just our bodies today. So that's important for people to know as well.
Okay, thank you so much. We are about to end, so I'd like just to ask you to send me the link to the recording video. So, do you like to add anything?
Oh, I mean, it's just such a broad topic. I mean, we've just really scratched the surface in the few minutes that we've had together. So, yeah, no, I think probably a longer conversation. We could talk some more, but at the moment, that's probably enough for the little clip you need for this project.
Exactly. So, it has been a pleasure to me to be there and to have you here. So, thank you again, and nice to meet you.
Thanks very much, Sharif. Thanks for the conversation. All the best.
Thank you so much.